Hello and welcome to Live with the 19th. My name is Barbara Rodriguez. I'm the State House's reporter for the 19th. I'm incredibly honored to introduce our panel today, Dr. Sharon Contreras, Superintendent of Guilford County Schools in North Carolina, Luz Hernandez, a bilingual elementary teacher for 25 years in Milwaukee Public Schools in Wisconsin, Congresswoman Jahana Hayes, a former teacher who now represents Connecticut's 5th District. She's been recognized as Connecticut's Teacher of the Year, and in 2016, the National Teacher of the Year. And Susan Hudson, a special education instructor at Thornwood High School in South Holland, Illinois. Thank you all again for participating in this panel. So this is an extraordinary time in public education, whether that's as a policymaker, an educator, or student, or a parent. The coronavirus has effectively created different worlds in public education, in-person learning and virtual at-home learning, or some variation of that. And so I want to kick things off by just asking, each one of you how you're doing right now in this moment as educators and leaders. And I'll start with you, Susan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So right now, I think all of my colleagues would agree with me when I say we are really trying to not only just practice self-care, but be there for our students. A lot of our students need to be recognized that they're going through some stress, especially our high school students. They have unprecedented amount of responsibilities that are being put upon them. And we just really need to recognize that they need us and that sometimes it goes beyond the curriculum.
And I'll extend this question to you, Luz, as well.
I also thank you for this opportunity. And I very much agree with Susan that this is a very stressful time. I myself am doing well physically, health-wise, but I am very worried for my students and their families. I serve the most vulnerable families here in the city of Milwaukee. I am a bilingual teacher in an urban school setting. And so the families are struggling financially. And so also technology is a big challenge for them and for my students at times. And so I'm just really worried. That's how I'm doing. I'm very worried for my students and for their families.
Superintendent Contreras, let me turn to you. You lead one of the nation's largest school districts with more than 10,000 employees and 73,000 pre-K through 12 students. What does this moment look like for you right now?
So I just was thinking about leading one of the largest school districts in the country. We have 73,000 students, 10,000 employees, 127 schools. And we've been trying to deal with all of the challenges, many that others shy away from. And there's a reason I said that so many people stay away from the superintendency because there are just so many challenges when there is not a pandemic. And these are challenges that are inherent in our education system. So we've been working to ensure, first and foremost, that we address the issue of the census. We're in the midst of collecting census data in the middle of this pandemic to make sure that our students and their families are counted. We want to make sure that every single family has a say and that we don't lose more funding during the pandemic. So we've been mapping and analyzing census data. We also use that data to map the broadband internet connectivity to determine where to place learning centers and internet hubs in our communities and where to more strategically place community locations for meal distribution. We've served more than 2 million meals. We've been outfitting new technology on school buses and deploying them to housing developments, mobile home parks, and other distressed areas to increase internet access for students, while also distributing more than 18,000 laptops and tablets to students. That may sound like a lot, and it is, but remember, we have 73,000 students, so we should have had more. We've been expanding our access to hotspots outside of our buildings. We've ensured that our incarcerated youth in juvenile detention centers and adult jails were not forgotten, fighting to ensure they had access to technology that previously had been banned as a safety risk. So we had to fight for them to have technology. Sadly, we also had to fight to ensure that our students living in homeless shelters and transitional housing had access to technology and instruction, a situation made more challenging by the quarantine and strict isolation rules. And using our value-added data to identify our highest performing teachers, those who consistently help students grow a year or more academically, and then filming those teachers as they delivered high quality lessons online. We then use those lessons during the first 3 weeks of school to give our teachers who are not on contract during the summer months time to better prepare for remote learning. So we use the very best teachers we have to do all of the instruction for the first 3 weeks. We've ordered more than 79,000 tablets and laptops and 3,500 more hotspots to help bridge the digital divide during the pandemic, while also strategically moving toward a one-to-one district. And we've partnered with 65 community groups to feed hungry children in our community, distributing more than 19,000 meals daily, for a peak of more than 40,000 meals daily last spring. As I said,
I apologize. I just want to make sure, I actually absolutely want to talk a little bit more about the digital divide a bit. I want to make sure that we get to some of the other issues, and some of that's going to be some of the very answers that you just gave. I want to make sure I ask Congresswoman, you are a former teacher. I understand that you have plans to return to the classroom at some point in the future. I'm curious how the conversation of virtual learning is playing out in the halls of Congress, still sort of being mindful of the general question of just how you're doing as a leader right now.
Well, I always refer to myself as not a former teacher, but an educator serving in Congress, because I don't know what a former teacher is. It's wired into my DNA. As far as how I'm doing, I think I share what we heard Lou say at the very beginning, just a sense of concern. I'm concerned about my former students. I'm concerned about my former colleagues. I actually just recovered from COVID. My husband and I both tested positive for COVID. I have a middle school age son who is at home virtually. And while people think, well, your mom's a teacher, this is a no-brainer. It is so incredibly difficult for me to continue my work as a congresswoman and now be my son's teacher. So I can't imagine someone who is not professionally trained to do this, what they're experiencing. It weighs so heavily on me because I understand completely the depth of what schools will need to get back to normal. This is a temporary normal right now. So I am trying to help my colleagues understand that while in their mind they're thinking of legislation in a hypothetical way, I'm trying to connect the students and the faces and the educators on the other side of this legislation and help them to truly understand what that means. I spent 15 years in a Title I district, so I know that it's not just about being healthy, it's about closing all of those gaps that the superintendent just talked about. And there's a tremendous burden that comes with that because you feel responsible for the people who are standing in front of kids trying to help them feel safe.
One of my central questions in this whole conversation is, again, who is getting left behind with at-home learning and why? And I'll pose that question to one of our teachers, Luce, just because I feel like everyone's going to have a different response to this, but I'm very particularly interested in hearing what teachers on the ground are experiencing right now.
Well, I think who is getting left behind really are those, first and foremost, those students that were already behind before the pandemic hit. So now that the pandemic hit, I think it's just, accumulated to the burden that they have to bear in terms of, what they have to learn and how quickly they have to learn it. And now this new newer way of learning, even though, you know, as an educator, I of course implemented technology into my teaching as a resource. It was not used as the main mode of, you know, transmitting the educational experience. And so now that in itself, I think, is also very much a burden for our students. And I know that Ms. Susan Hudson is a special education educator, but I am also very concerned about the special education students that I service, that my school services, that my district services, because I think that they are really getting left behind. In an urban district such as Milwaukee Public Schools, you know, a lot of the parents don't have the resources. I'm not saying all, but a lot of the parents don't have the resources to, for example, hire a private tutor, which more affluent parents do. If they happen to be parents of a special needs child, they have the resources to do that. And I know that for a fact. And so I really, really am concerned about special education students, and then just students that were already behind academically before the pandemic hit.
Susan, I saw you nodding your head a lot. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this.
I completely agree with Luz. Our most vulnerable students are definitely from underserved communities, are definitely being left behind because they don't have the structure and support at home and the adequate technology. It's great that we made ourselves a one-to-one district and provided Chromebooks and a hotspot. But if there's many people at home using the internet, you might need more than one hotspot because the connectivity issues. People need to understand that working independently is hard and that our students were dropped into a whole new realm of learning and they need time to acclimate to this new way of learning, as do educators to teaching students. This thing that people say new normal, this ain't normal. It's a pandemic. Nobody experienced it prior to 2020. So we're all trying to learn together and we have to be patient with it.
I think this is a segue into...
Barbara, can I just add to what Susan just said? Because I'm so happy that you included educators. I mean, first of all, when you talk about technology, I know that for my son, even though we had a computer in the house, he's asked to print things, to scan things, to send them back to the teacher. There's a lot of times where I have to assist him to do that. But there's also, students aren't the only ones who are affected. And it shouldn't be an us or them. There are so many educators who were told at the beginning of the week, you are going to transfer the delivery of all of your instruction to virtual or online. Teaching is a profession. Those are skills that are learned, that are practiced, that acquire time to acclimate to them. So this idea that you could do the same as a classroom teacher, my secret weapon was relationship building, was getting kids to trust me, to talking to them. That requires a different skill set when you're doing it virtually. So we have to, as Dr. Contreras said, provide opportunities for professional development for teachers, for them to understand and learn the platforms. And for many people who had never done this before, just giving a student a computer is not enough.
I want to make sure that I can highlight a little bit more about this conversation over the technology gap. There's been reports of school districts having difficulty obtaining enough laptops for their students being unable to access Wi-Fi. I think logistically, or from a logistics standpoint, I want to better understand how educators and students are managing, and I want to pose that question to Superintendent Contreras.
Yes, it's been very difficult because of a lack of adequate educational funding. We depend on our county our state and county for funding. We're not allowed to have a lease-to-own program or engage in a lease-to-own program without our county allowing us to do so, and they denied that even in the midst of a pandemic. So we had to scramble for every dollar we could find, cut off all spending, just so we could purchase 79,000 devices. And the county didn't tell us they were going to deny our request until I think about May. We made the request at the end of March. And so we scrambled to put together all of the end of year funds to place the order, only to find that there's a global backlog. And so our students, even after having money to purchase the Chromebooks, we still don't have the Chromebooks in the district yet. And so our community has been coming together. We had to do a drive for gently used technology devices, laptops, Chromebooks, and our technology department, wiped them clean so that we could loan them to students. But this is not fair. This is not right in the United States of America, that there are entire school districts where students don't have access to technology, students don't have access to high-speed connectivity. And as educators, we've been talking about this homework gap for a long time. And there are government bodies that we depend on that can just say to us, no, we're not going to get that for you. We're not going to address this issue. And the parents don't understand all of these nuances of how government works. So they're angry at the very people, the teachers, the principals, the school boards, the superintendents, who are the ones who are fighting for their children, because that's who they see. And those are the people that can't turn around and deliver the laptop, can't deliver the hotspot. And so it's been a really difficult position to be in. And it's heartbreaking. To know you're losing students, to know there are children in homes that just are not getting an education and you can't even locate them. And this should not be the situation we're in the United States of America in 2020.
I want to make sure that I can also highlight that it's not just the conversation over technology. I think educators are thinking as well about the dynamics of mental health for students. I'm curious, Susan, what you're thinking about when it comes to those dynamics versus just even technology.
Sure. Well, we have to recognize that, it's almost like the Congresswoman said, people have to realize that students are at home and they're missing that connection with the instructor. So it's the relationship building. It's I don't have the teacher over my shoulder to tell me if that's right or if that's wrong. So they are dealing with an unsurmountable amount of stress. And then when I speak about my high school students, I know kids who they come to they come to learning on the computer, and then they have to go to work, because they now have the responsibility to help provide for the home if a parent lost their job due to the pandemic. So there are some rather who also have to take care of siblings while their parent might be going to work. So we have to think about the simple fact that we are in a pandemic. It's that we don't know what our children are seeing on television and the climate they have in their homes. And so that added adverse childhood experience that they're going to is something that districts and community members need to think about when they start saying, oh, my student needs to be in the classroom. Yeah, maybe that's true. I would like to be in the classroom too, but I want to be safe when I go into the classroom, because I know in my classroom I have no windows, right? So if I were to go back in the building, I want to be safe because my husband has a compromised immune system and I don't want to bring that back home. I don't want to bring that to my grandmother when I go watch her and visit her because she's 90 years old. So people need to think about the stress that kids are going through and what's around them in their home. That's something we have no control over.
I think I just want to add to that, because all of my experiences frame my decision making. And now as a legislator in Congress, I see all of the opportunities in what is happening. This is probably has been the most difficult time for me in my first term in Congress. But I think it could not be more critically important that I am where I am right now. Because as I said, I can walk this through from beginning to end. And many of the things that we're talking about in the framework of COVID-19 in this pandemic are things that I already knew about in the classroom. Mm-hmm. The fact that we could not close schools in March without having a conversation about how we're going to feed children That is a food security issue, not a school issue, but that's something that I was buying snacks for 10 years in the classroom to make sure kids ate. The fact that we can't reopen the economy without reopening schools because parents have to go to work, that's a childcare issue. Again, not a school-based factor, but these are all of the things that we're talking about. As the superintendent said, it's not just about buying technology. We have to now increase the number of IT personnel. People are talking about how kids are negatively impacted. So we need to have a conversation about making sure that we invest in trauma-informed counselors to meet them when they come back from what is probably the most traumatic experience of their life. And again, this year when Congress considered an infrastructure bill, we had to take a step back and be reminded that infrastructure is not just road, bridges, and highways. Our infrastructure package has to include broadband connectivity and internet technology so that our children would be connected at school and in the home. So there's a part of me that, while this is probably a worst case scenario, I am happy that we are having a national conversation about all of the things that I've been screaming for help for the profession that I love and the students that I dedicated and invested my life in. Now everybody is noticing it and talking about it, and I think we have a heightened sense of responsibility to not go back to where we were in February, but to begin to address these systemic inequities because we know the kids who are the most affected by them.
I want to make sure that I ask a kind of a general question, and I'll offer it up to any of you, whether it's just, is it safe to return to in-person learning, or is that a really complicated question? I'm curious if any one person feels particularly strongly about what that answer is.
Well, if I may speak to that first. I think right now, given that, at least I'm going to speak from my perspective, which is I am teaching in the city of Milwaukee. Right now, the state of Wisconsin is the new hotspot for this virus, okay? And so for me, I very much appreciate my union, the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association, who, 2 months before school started, worked with administration, with our superintendent, Dr. Keith Posley, to ensure that we would start the school year off virtually. Because again, like Susan said, we can't come back and teach and feel safe. The teachers and of course the students and their families. And so I think it is, what is important is a continuity of learning. Okay, and I know that there's some school districts here in the state of Wisconsin, in Kenosha, for example, okay? The teachers there started off in person, started off hybrid, and had to go back to all virtual. Okay, where is the continuity in learning there? It is not happening. Okay, and that is because, and I very much understand that the parents, need their children to come to school, but they also need them to stay safe. And we, the educators, need to stay safe. So I think that for now, given the reality of the pandemic, the safest thing to do is to do all virtual learning.
I'm curious to ask Superintendent Contreras about this, just because I know that in her school district, there are plans in place for in-person learning and a mix of virtual, and I'm just sort of curious what that experience has showed about this conversation.
It's a very complicated situation, and it's the very thing that keeps me up at night, trying to make the best decision possible. What worries me is that half of the districts that serve primarily white students are reopened and serving students. Only a quarter of districts that serve primarily Black and brown students are open. It's worse in the South from the data I'm reading. So the very students that have for centuries been denied education still are not going to school. They begin school behind their peers, their white peers, when there's not a pandemic. There is a tremendous amount of data about the potential learning loss in reading and math and what the lifelong repercussions of that is. So I try to think about how can we begin to think about reentry, even if we can't do it all at once. We just can't wait for there to be 0 COVID cases. That's not realistic. And the children who will suffer the most from that sort of expectation are the children who look like us. So we've been trying to bring back pre-K and K, and we're now starting to bring back first, second, and third grade. We have very vulnerable students who are living in shelters, homeless students. We have 3,000 homeless students. Those students, as you know, are most vulnerable to human trafficking, sex trafficking. We have many students who are just at risk of dropping out. Almost all of them are poor, Black and brown. I can't say it's okay for us not to come back when we've spent millions of dollars putting safety protocols in place. So I think we have to start some sort of gradual reentry for the most vulnerable students, for the youngest students, so that their parents can work and not devolve into more abject poverty, and that their achievement gap is not widening. So while I have very serious concerns, I think I have to balance that with the concerns of what the life outcomes will be for these children of color, these poor children, if they're not in school.
I just want to add one final thought to that, because I too share all of your concerns. And one of the things that we've been talking about in committee and that I have brought up is to try to use some of the, maybe next summer, invest in summer school, after school resource programs, instead of having kids go out for breaks, to close the gap of, that summer slide or some of the lost time this year. Because as we have all said before, opening schools where kids and teachers don't feel safe is just geography. Kids are not going to learn if they're there and they're concerned every day that someone's there, someone's not there, that someone at home is sick. So just forward thinking, I have shared with my committee that I think if we have a vaccine this time next year and people are safe and communities are getting up and running and back to normal, maybe we can then add in the supports to close some of the gaps that are lost right now. But to just put people back in a situation so that everything else can return to normal, I think is unfair to kids and to adults.
I'm sort of curious in this point with Superintendent Contreras talking about a decision that sounds local in some ways, and obviously the Congresswoman talking about something that she'd like to see maybe advance through Congress. Is the conversation about reopening schools a local issue, a state issue, a federal issue, some very specific combination? I pose that question to all. I'm curious if any one person feels particularly strongly about that.
Well, I'll be quick because it starts at the federal level, and there are lots of people who think that the federal government should not be involved in local education decisions. And there's a lot that should happen locally, but the federal government absolutely should be making the investments to support state and local governments so that communities, especially communities who are operating off of their tax base, which again puts some of our most disadvantaged students in a worse position, they should not be left to now worry about how they're going to get personal protective equipment or internet or computer equipment, hire more teachers, have them perform more of these services. That is absolutely a place where the federal government should step in, just like we stepped in to support businesses and other parts of the economy to stabilize them until they can stand again. We should be providing the same level of support for our students and the teachers and educators, bus drivers, cafeteria staff that serve them every day.
I would say that superintendents and school boards are not qualified to set the metrics by which school districts should determine if students should return. there are superintendent school board members who are receiving death threats over this. These should have been determined at either the state level or federal level, and each district would probably return at a different pace or different dates, but based on the same metrics. Now what we have is you could be right next to a district and have a completely different criteria for re-entry, and the parents simply don't understand this. And it has been terrible for us. Every time I have to get up in front of the board and try to explain this stuff, I say to them, I am a doctor, but I'm a PhD, not an MD. And I'm doing my best, but I should not be in this position. And you should feel uncomfortable too. And we should demand that those in positions of leadership, our governors, those at the federal level, come up with a criteria for us, because it's just not fair to our constituents, to those across the state, that every school district is making this up as we go, and depending on the quality of your Department of Public Health, instead of the Department of Health and Human Services at the state level or at the federal level. And they're all tiptoeing around this because of politics, and we're in the midst of an election, instead of just making the right decision and coming up with a good criteria. And it's a terrible situation for every school board and superintendent in this nation.
I want to make sure I ask a little bit about what else apart from in-person schooling would help students who aren't doing well with virtual learning. Are we thinking enough outside of the box? Are there models of success that stand out for any one person?
I don't think anyone can really answer that question, because again, we've not seen this before, right? So remote learning is going to look different across the nation because everyone rolled it out a little bit differently. Every school district and home structure is going to look different. I've seen students who complete class in various areas of their home. Not every child has the luxury of sitting at a desk with an ergonomic chair in a quiet room. The reality is that students of all ages, not only are they stressed out, but they are dealing with something unprecedented. So I don't really honestly think anyone can truly answer that question, because we just don't have the answers.
I want to make sure I also ask all of you this question, making sure that I understand, whether you have a call to action for the audience about what you think should come next. And we can start with Superintendent Contreras.
Yeah, so, I'm going to say what I always say, and that is, it is so important that we vote, and that we not vote just based on what people say, but vote on the record and really take some time to make sure that we understand whether or not the individual that you are voting for actually supports public education, making sure they support high-speed internet connectivity for all Americans, and that they support making sure that we get this pandemic under control, and that they can speak to you about how we're going to get this under control, so that the greatest burden does not fall on school districts in this country, but that we all work on this together, and that we can get students back in school, get teachers back in school as quickly as possible in a safe way. But please, whatever you do, vote.
Luz, I'm curious, a call to action for the audience.
You know what? That is exactly what I have written on my notes as I was preparing for this panel discussion. What Dr. Contreras just said, vote. Vote at the local level in terms of your school board, at the city level. Here in Milwaukee, we have aldermen, and of course the mayor, and at the state level. Here in Wisconsin, we have a Republican state legislature that has really put up roadblocks for what the Democratic governor has tried to do in terms of the pandemic. So then you have to really think, who am I aligned with? And again, as Dr. Contreras said, really, if you have a child in a public school, in public education, then who best supports those ideals? Okay, which candidates? And so, yes, very much vote.
Susan, I'm curious for you, what message you have for everyone.
My call to action is the same as the ladies. We need to make sure that the people who are elected to office, all offices, are well vetted and aligned with our best interests and support public education, period.
And Congresswoman?
Well, as the elected official on this panel, I say I'm Johanna Hayes and I approve this message. But a couple other things, because that is so important, but Dr. Contreras talked about it at the top of the panel. The census is so incredibly important. In Congress, we appropriate billions of dollars in funds. So to make sure that the resources that a community needs are allocated to that community and that we can plan ahead. Ms. Hernandez, when she first came on and you introduced her as a bilingual educator, I remember in my district, we had a year where we had to open up 13 new bilingual classes because no one had prepared for all of these students aging out of elementary school and going into middle school. The census helps us to do things like that. And obviously vote. It is now probably more important. You hear this all the time. This is the most important election of your lifetime. But this is the most important election of your lifetime. But I'll add to the voting piece because it's not just about voting. This idea that you elect a leader and then you send them to do the work and solve all the problems and fix everything, that's really not how it works. We have to hold leaders accountable to make sure that after they get the position that they're doing what they said that they would do. Mm-hmm. In my previous life, in my current life, I would say stay involved. In my previous life, I would have said, listen, stay woke. Parents need to be woke. Educators need to be woke. Everybody needs to be involved because every day in Congress, for all of my teacher friends who say, I don't get involved in politics, let me help you understand that every day I take a vote, I make a decision that impacts your future, that impacts your healthcare, that impacts your retirement. So whether or not you are involved in the conversation, it's happening without you. So voting is not enough. You don't vote and then go home and lock your door and pull your shades back down and retreat into your corner. You vote and you stay woke and stay engaged.
I want to ask another question. With the upcoming winter months, I'm curious about how that plays a role in the conversation about what to do next. And I'll pose that question to Susan and Luz, given that you both live in states that get pretty cold in the wintertime.
As far as the winter months go, I think that the winter months are going to be very challenging as far as COVID, from what I have heard. The winter months are going to pretty much have the virus get worse. I guess the one good thing is that everybody is going to stay inside, but then again, that could be bad because then, we're not out in, out in getting fresh air as much as we are right now in the summer and in the fall. But I think it's just, in terms of, I've stated before that I really, as much as I really sympathize with the parents and, I am here for the parents that I work with. I have been here from even before day one. Since the summer, I was calling my parents to make sure that they were ready to start, virtual learning with their students, in which I found they weren't. So many a night I spent, at home at night with them trying to figure out this whole technology piece. But I really worry again that during those winter months, the mental health of the families is really going to be impacted even more, those long winter dark days. And so one thing that I've tried to do here with my class, even though it's hard to build relationships, online, I teach third grade. And so the first few weeks of school were just getting to know my students. And of course I did do some academics, but that, I really needed to get to know them. And so we played a lot of games, and you know, I would put on, and I still do, I put on some videos and we dance and just, you know, build those relationships. And one thing that I've done, and that a couple of the teachers in my building have also done, is for the time being, I am still being allowed, I set aside 1 day a week where I meet with the parents outside. And so in the winter, it's just, they're just gonna have to come in a little bit, I guess. I'm gonna see how that works out. And they come and they pick up work packets for their students. And I've also taken advantage of handing out important information in the community, resources that are available to them, where, you know, if I sent it out in an email or sent it out on the Remind app, which I use to communicate with them, they might not really grasp what I'm trying to communicate to them. But if I hand them a flyer that's in Spanish, okay, about, I just handed one out for food distribution that a local community organization is doing. So, you know, during the winter months, I think I'm going to need to do more of that, because I think, you know, the days are getting longer and drearier. And so they really need to feel like they have somebody in their corner. And at least for my students, I get 100% attendance. I've been doing it since the first week of school when I started September 1st. That first week I did the first parent pickup, and it's been a lifesaver in terms of connecting with my parents. And of course we adhere, everybody wears their mask, and I've gotten to meet my students. Okay. I get to see them for about a minute, you know, but it's that connection to see them in person, socially distanced. You know, they hand me their work. I just ask them, how are you doing? How are you feeling? You know, it's nice to see you. And so that's been a lifesaver, and I hope to continue that during the winter months.
And unfortunately, on that point, we've run out of time. I intended to ask that question as well to Susan, but I just want to take a minute to thank all of you for taking this time today to participate in our panel. And thank you all again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.